What was that one thing? And for all of you, it's going to be something different. But for me, at that stage in my life, it was that BMX bike. So when I hit play on this movie, the opening scene was these guys, much older than I was at 9, but, in their teenage years, in their high school years, riding their BMXs, delivering papers, doing tricks, jumping over things, and just laughing. And then the chase with the cop, and it all ended where he delivered the final paper and he says, one of these days I'm going to get it. And I think it was 8:10 or something like that. But he was always a little late with finishing his paper out. Now, through the rest of that movie, not to go deep into it, the main character, Crew Jones, was on an internal journey. He wanted to make something of himself. He was from a kind of lower middle class family, much like I was, where he had seen struggles and, money wasn't the thing, but he wanted to be noticed. He wanted to be recognized. He wanted to win. Well, lo and behold, this BMX company, Mongoose, which was a real company back then, was putting this big contest on, but it was only for professional riders, and it was called RAD. But at a council meeting where they were trying to get this BMX event approved by the city council, they were shutting it down because this race wasn't allowing any of the local kids a chance to qualify. So what'd they do? Well, they put on qualifying races where, of course, all the pro riders were winning, but there was one local, Crew Jones, that paper delivery boy that I watched and that I saw myself becoming. And at the end of that movie, he qualified, but he went through struggle after struggle. He had to open his own t-shirt company. Make note of that. He had to open his own t-shirt company to be allowed to race in this movie's Hell Track. So that was the name of the race, Hell Track. And to race in that, you had to be a sponsored rider. So he created a t-shirt company, sold shirts, and that was his sponsor, was RAD. And RAD was the name of his company. But then they came up and they changed the rules. How many times has something happened in your life where the rules got changed? A lot of times, right? Well, for Crew Jones, the owner of Mongoose Bikes, the one that was putting this race on, didn't want a local to race in it because this local could potentially beat his number one rider, which he had a lot of money riding on. So he did everything he could to stop Crew Jones from riding in Hell Track. But through a combination of a whole bunch of people coming together and raising money, Crew Jones sold $50,000 worth of his shirts. And he did it because of pretty much one guy who bought about $40-some thousand worth of shirts in the movie so that Crew Jones could race in Hell Track. And of course, back in the 80s, there was usually a happy ending. And you remember Crew Jones won, or maybe you don't remember, he won Hell Track. That other Mongoose rider got let go because he didn't win. And then he joined Crew Jones. So anyway, not to sum up a movie, and some of you even get boring because you don't care about it, but I want you to understand that movie, that winning attitude, that go for it, that give up everything, and he did. He gave up college. He gave up a whole bunch of things to ride in Hell Track, became my motto for the rest of my life. My internal journey to success was modeled after this one single movie when I was 9 years old. And I really didn't parlay this back to the events in my life. But when I was 16 years old, started a clothing line called Fat Clothing Company. Why did I start that? Because I needed money, like Crew Jones did, to travel, to compete, and to become the pro snowboarder that I did. Not only that, everything in my life has always been about winning, about going for broke, about doing what everybody else is unwilling to do. Crew Jones and his two friends were the only 3 locals that rode in those qualifier races because everybody else was scared to do it. In my life, I've had to do what everybody else was scared to do. Everybody else was unwilling to do. Everybody else didn't want to take the risks, or everybody else listened to everyone around them tell them they can't do it. They shouldn't do it. Just like Crew Jones' mom telling him, you can't race in Hell Track because that's when you are going to your college tests. And if you miss these tests, you're not going to make it to college. And Crew Jones had to go on the line, defy his mother's warnings that he was not to race in those qualifiers. But he did it anyway because he was willing to do what everybody else was unwilling to do. And he was unwilling to follow other people's ideas, other people's thoughts, other people telling him he couldn't. And he had a couple people that were pushing him through it. He had a girl that was pushing him through it. He had his friends pushing him through it. He has his sister pushing him through it. You only need one, folks. Think of the movie Rudy. Rudy only had the janitor that believed in him. Well, Crew Jones had a couple more people believing him, but he had a lot of people believing against him. My whole life, and probably your whole life too, you've had people believing against you. People telling you you can't do this. You shouldn't do that. You're going to lose it all. That's a stupid idea, kid. You'll shoot your eye out. Remember that movie? Well, I had all that too. And it almost did get me to quit. It almost made it so that I didn't continue on to opening my snowboard shop called Fat Man Board Shops. Too many people were telling me it's a bad idea. You're going to risk it all. You're going to lose it all. It's never going to work. And when too many people tell you something, you start to conform to their failed ideas. You start to think of yourself, yeah, well, what if I do fail? Wow, what if I lose it all? Wow, what if this doesn't work? We start to conform to those failed realities, those failed dreams, those failed journeys. Because that's all it is, folks. The people that tell you you can't do something is because they couldn't do it, because they failed, because they didn't go after it, because they weren't willing to do what everybody else was unwilling to do. That's the internal journey, folks. Crew Jones in that movie, Rad, he created his destiny. I created my destiny against all adversity. You create your own destiny, or you conform to somebody else's failed destiny. There is no other way. The internal journey to success is exactly that. It's internal. You remember earlier, I mentioned that pro snowboarder, Eric Jackson. I'm sure a lot of people told him that was the dumbest thing, to chase your dream, to chase snow, to really just fall in love with something that, well, you could get hurt and you're done. And you know what? For him, the risk was worth the reward. And yes, in snowboarding, your career is short, just like a pro football player, just like any other risky sport or risky thing you do. Eventually, there's going to come an event. Eventually, there's going to come something that makes it so you can't continue. And then you got to recreate that vision inside you. That moment for me happened back in, it would have been probably the mid 2000s, pretty close. I would say it would have been about 2010, if I guess. 2010. I had just started riding for Forum Snowboards. Not only Forum Snowboards, one of my other big sponsors was 32 Boots. And 32 Boots was inviting me out to do a lot of photo shoots with them, with other pro riders. And I got invited to Mammoth. And kind of ironic, I'm going to Mammoth next week because Mammoth just got dumped on with almost 10 feet of snow. So I'm going to go ride some POW in Mammoth and revisit those days. But the days in Mammoth that I recall is this. In 2009 or 2010, I'm there with 32 Boots. And out here in the East Coast, it's always gray and gloomy. But in the West Coast, there's lots of bluebird days, sunny days. And we roll up the first day, we're going to go out on the hill. We're going to film bluebird, 40 some degrees, first thing in the morning. Didn't even have a jacket on. And I was just like in a hoodie, 32 Boots hoodie, of course, representing. And we roll up to the park, and right there in front of me, it's just the most perfect jump I'd ever seen. It was a jump line of 3 jumps going into a couple rails and then a couple bigger jumps at the bottom. And I'm just looking at this jump thinking this thing is perfect. The snow conditions are perfect. Listen to the birds. I got all these other pro riders behind me. I got the team manager of 32 Boots watching me like this is my moment to shine. Again, folks, I'm always wanting to win. That movie, Rad, he always wanted to win. Well, I always wanted to win. So my thought was, all right, I'm going to go first. I'm not going to ask permission. I'm just going to say dropping. And I roll up. But I roll up really fast because I didn't really know how big the jump was. I sort of looked at it and I thought, all right, I'm going to need this much speed. 1 speed check and then I'm good. And I did 1 speed check. But what I failed to realize, it was early in the morning. Although it was warm and although it was sunny, the snowpack was still pretty fast because it was firm from the night before being really cold. And I had way more speed than what I needed for this jump. And there we go. I come off that lip on my toe edge. I push down. I pop into a back 5 cork, perfectly executed. Grab the board, push the nose out. Oh, perfect. I get around to about 360 degrees. And I watch the landing go bye-bye. And I'm still spinning because remember, I was doing a back 5, another 180. But the 360 is where the landing ended. So the rest of it was basically just going out into the stratosphere, was just going right past the landing. And you know what? I knew it was coming. That moment when you see that happen, you just know nothing good is going to come out of this. So you just relax your body because you've done this enough times. You know what this is going to feel like. Maybe in your mind, you're going to catch the tail end of the tranny. It's still going to hurt, but you're going to be okay. But unfortunately, I didn't catch the tail end of the tranny. I caught the flats. And what it felt like as well, I don't know, go to your second story window of your house and just jump. When you hit the ground, that's what it felt like. It was boom. Sorry if I scared you a little bit. And then all of a sudden you come to and you try to get up thinking it's okay, but it's not. You see, I had pain in my lower back. I had pain in my arm. I had deep pain in my ankle and my heel. I didn't know at that moment what had happened. And I got up and I rode down and I felt the pain settling in. I went down to the lodge and I knew what it was. I'd broken my tailbone. I didn't know it yet, but my bicep, I had torn my bicep muscle, because that's the arm I put down and took a lot of the absorption. I had bruised my heel so deeply that it turned black the next day as my tailbone turned deep black, and so did my butt cheek. Folks, that injury, although not as bad as other injuries, I've had worse. That injury at that moment, that was it. You see, that was the year that I had got my big break. And that was the year that the first jump I hit with this big break in Mammoth, California. That was it. The internal success, the internal journey had ended right there. I didn't know it yet, but I would at the end of that season after the pain did not go away while I filmed my very last video part in the last video I would ever be in as a pro snowboarder. Do It Right. Check it out. Google Do It Right. That was the last video part. And in that video part, all I can tell you is when you watch Chris Naugle riding in it, that's not Chris Naugle riding. That's a broken ex-pro Chris Naugle riding, because at that moment when I hit the ground, that was it. Career was over.